Hi everyone, how are you all doing? Welcome back to the channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Bruno Villas and today I'm going to tell you another story. If you're just arriving here now and you're not yet subscribed to the channel, I invite you to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss notifications. Because that way, every time I publish a new video, YouTube will notify you and you can come watch it with me. Guys, I also invite you to follow me on social media because there I'm always interacting with you and also posting different content from what I post here on YouTube. But now let's get to what matters and let's dive into today's case. The case today is quite bizarre, and I decided to do it because several subscribers have been asking me to talk about it for a few months now. This strange story begins in San Antonio, Texas, in the United States, with a girl named Alyssa. Alyssa was born in 1981 and says that she always had problems within her family structure and couldn't wait to leave home and have her own freedom. She then started looking for ways that could help her achieve this desire to free herself from her family. In 1995, when she was just 15 years old, she entered an internet chat room where she met a man named Stephen Pladl, who was 20 at the time. The age difference wasn't that significant, and the young man convinced the girl to run away from home and take a bus to New York. Guys, Texas is very far from New York. It's more than 3 hours by plane or almost 2 days by bus. Just from that, we can already imagine how much that girl really wanted to leave home, definitely. The two met and started living together. A little over a year later, Alyssa became pregnant, and then at 17, in January of 98, she became the mother of a beautiful baby girl named Denise Pladl. Despite all the cuteness of that baby, her father, Steve, did not handle the arrival of the new family member well. Alyssa says that he barely held his daughter in his arms and was quite careless with her. He would yell at the baby and pinch her until she was all bruised. Stephen also spent a good part of the time complaining about the crying, and always tried to shove objects into the girl's mouth to keep her quiet. Things got so serious that he even put the girl inside a box, wrapped in a blanket, and closed it so he wouldn't be bothered by the child's noise. Alyssa was forced to physically fight with him to rescue the baby before something bad happened to her. She would take the girl to the bedroom and try to calm her down so her husband wouldn't get even angrier. Alyssa was confused and didn't know whom to turn to. The couple then decided to put the baby up for adoption, claiming they were going through various financial difficulties and would not be able to raise the girl. In September of 98, when the baby was 8 months old, she was adopted by a man named Anthony Fusco and his wife Kelly Fusco. Anthony Fusco was a retired Navy officer who also worked for many years in the Coast Guard. They issued new documents for the girl, and from then on she would be called Katie Fusco. The girl was taken to her new residence, the Fusco family home, which was located in Dutchess County, still in the state of New York. Alyssa was quite shaken by the handover of her baby, but she still stayed with Stephen. She later revealed in an interview that she decided to stay with him because he said that if she left, he would take his own life, film everything, and find a way to make sure those images reached her. With that, she remained by his side. In fact, the two of them moved to Richmond in the state of Virginia, which is about a 5-hour drive from New York. 8 years later, in 2006, they formalized their marriage in a simple ceremony with few guests. The following year, in 2007, the couple's second daughter was born. 5 years later, in 2012, the couple's third daughter was born. Therefore, they now had 2 girls at home. Allison reported that by this time, the two were already mature enough to take care of and raise their daughters on their own. The marriage continued, but Stephen's temperament was quite harmful to the family. Besides the problem he created at home, he also proved incapable of securing a steady job. Alyssa started working multiple jobs to provide them with the minimum comfort possible. Additionally, Stephen also kept 4 guns hidden that he had purchased. All were acquired legally, because he had no criminal record. As time went on, Stephen became increasingly violent, angry, temperamental, and unpredictable. When he became explosive, he would throw furniture against the wall, punch the walls, and break everything in sight. There was even an incident where a neighbor's cat entered the family garage, and Stephen became so angry with the animal that he killed it with his bare hands, then put the little creature in a bag and threw it in the trash. One of the couple's daughters was diagnosed with autism, but even after the diagnosis, Stephen continued to call the little girl retarded in front of everyone without much concern. With all this, folks, it becomes evident that their marriage was going from bad to worse, and Alyssa was already considering separating from her husband, to the point where they no longer slept in the same bed. On the other hand, during all this time that Alyssa was struggling to keep her daughter safe and working exhausting hours to ensure nothing was lacking at home, about 340 kilometers away, Katie was living a wonderful life with parents who loved her and friends who admired her. Katie had a great talent for drawing, and her favorite theme was comic book illustrations. She even created a blog on the internet, Bean, where she shared her experiences and also her drawings. She showed interest in studying advertising in college and pursuing a career in digital advertising. Time went by, and absolutely nothing was lacking in the girl's life. However, when she was 16, she talked to her adoptive parents and told them about her interest in meeting her biological parents. A short time later, when she was 17 years old, she managed to locate her biological parents and got in touch with them in August 2015 through Facebook. Several messages and video calls were exchanged until in June 2016, when she was 18 years old, Katie decided it was time to meet her biological parents. To do this, she decided to postpone her college enrollment for a few months and would spend some time with them before returning to study. Her adoptive parents, Ete, supported the girl's idea and imagined that the time with her other family, along with her other sisters, would be very good for Katie. Alyssa was very happy when she learned that her eldest daughter was heading to Virginia and would spend some time with them. Her arrival was a reason for joy and celebration for everyone. The girls were excited to meet their older sister. Alyssa was very happy at first, but soon noticed that Katie spent all her time glued to Steve, who was once again unemployed, while Alyssa went to work every day to support the household. As we already know, Alyssa and Stephen were no longer sleeping in the same bed, and because of this, he started sleeping on a mattress on the floor next to his daughter Katie. 9 months passed, and in March 2017, the divorce was finalized. Even before the divorce was finalized, in November 2016, Alyssa had already left the house with her 2 younger daughters. But Katie decided to stay with her father, who until then continued sleeping on the floor of the room. What Alyssa didn't know at the time was that Katie and her father Stephen had started an incestuous affair behind her back, and Katie was pregnant by her own father. The two shared custody of the 2 younger girls, and that's when everything fell apart. In the first half of 2017, the children returned from the weekend at their father's house, and there was a very strange note in the 11-year-old daughter's diary. The note said, "My dad also calls her baby his baby," and another said, "My dad even says she is my stepmother. She doesn't even want me to call her sister anymore." Alyssa immediately filed for a restraining order against her husband in family court. She also filed an incest report, as in the state of Virginia this act is considered a crime, classified as a Class 5 felony. Although in the United States, in the state of Virginia, incest is a crime, here in Brazil it is not. And there was a case I brought to the channel that, well, it was an incestuous case involving a throuple with a father, daughter, and son-in-law, and a very, very, very complex detail. The father's girlfriend ordered to, end the lives of the father and daughter. Anyway, I won't give too many spoilers. When this video ends, you can go watch it. I'll leave a card around here, okay? two agents visited Alyssa's house and talked to her daughters. The investigation continued in the background. Shortly after, on July 20th, 2017, father and daughter took a trip of almost 300 kilometers to the agricultural region of Parkton in the state of Maryland. This long and tiring trip had a rather grotesque reason. Father and daughter planned to marry illegally on this date in this location, far from Alyssa and also from the authorities who were silently investigating the relationship between the two. As bizarre as it may seem, several people attended the wedding, among them Katie's adoptive parents, Anthony and Kelly, and also Steve's mother, Mrs. Grace Pladl, who was 72 years old. Anthony and Kelly claimed that there was nothing they could do but support their beloved daughter's decisions. They knew it was illegal, but they agreed to remain silent about it. After all, Katie and her father had different last names, and as long as no one spoke up, no one at the wedding would suspect the fraud. Mrs. Grace, Stephen's mother, simply did not comment on anything. She just supported her own son. After the ceremony, the two settled in Knightdale, which is a city located in the state of North Carolina. On the first day of September 2017, Katie had a beautiful baby named Bennett, who became the joy of the couple. As strange as it may seem, Stephen behaved completely differently with the birth of his son. He spent hours holding the boy, wasn't bothered by the crying. In short, he was a completely different father than he was to his daughters with Alyssa. But the fatherhood didn't last very long. As I mentioned, the investigations into the incest case between the two, which is a crime in the state of Virginia, were happening in the background and resulted in the arrest of Katie and Stephen in January 2018 when their baby was 4 months old. Both were arrested and extradited to Henrico County, Virginia, where they would be prosecuted for incest and also for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The baby was sent to stay with Grace, Stephen's mother. Kate was released, but she could not take her son home. She had the right to scheduled visits. When released, she could not live with Stephen's mother, Grace, because the baby was there. And she also could not live with her own mother, Alyssa, because obviously she was no longer welcome in her home. She also did not have the financial means to support herself, so she returned to her adoptive parents' home, then in the state of New York. A month later, Stephen was released to await trial in freedom, after posting bail in the amount of $28,000. I didn't find any information, folks, about who might have paid this bail, because after all, he lived without money, and would hardly have that amount on hand. Stephen was also legally prohibited from having any contact with his daughter, and since there was no restriction on him visiting his son at his mother's house, Grace, when this visit happened, it had to be on different days from Kate's visits, because as I mentioned, the two were completely prohibited from meeting. In this case, Kate, who was his daughter, couldn't meet with him, even though she was the mother of his son, Bennett. Strange, right, folks? But as you might imagine, the two started talking on the phone. Shortly after, in one of these calls, Kate stated that she was tired of it all, that everything had been a big mistake, and that she needed to focus on her career and her future. She was young and intelligent, and couldn't lose everything by running from the police or doing illegal things. She had finally realized that it had all gone too far. Well, as we already know about Stephen's explosive, violent, and uncontrollable profile, it's evident that he didn't agree with any of this and became very angry. He spent the next few weeks plotting something terrible that would make headlines in newspapers around the world. On April 12, 2018, Stephen went to Grace's house. He took her son Bennett, put him in the car, and said he would take him home. As I already told you, Grace didn't confront her son. She preferred to avoid confrontation. As soon as he got home, Stephen suffocated the baby until he stopped breathing and placed him in a closet. A few minutes later, he returned to confirm the death. Stephen left there and hit the road towards New York. He was euphoric and driven by adrenaline. He even called his mother and confessed what he did to the baby. But there was no way to stop. He had already started this, and he would go through with his plan to the end. Grace called the police to report that something horrible had happened to her grandson. But it was already too late. Stephen was already very close to the house where Kate was living. He waited outside in a position where he couldn't be easily seen. As soon as Anthony's car left the garage, Stephen began to follow it. In the car were Kate and Anthony. A few kilometers ahead, at the intersection leading to the highway that would take them to the state of Connecticut, Stephen stopped alongside and shot in their direction. Unfortunately, neither of them survived. Stephen then drove a little further to the state border. In Dover, he stopped by the roadside and took his own life. Perhaps when he devised that plan, he hadn't thought about it, but he ended up destroying several families, including his own. Kate, Bennett, and Anthony Fusco were buried on April 21st at St. Charles Borromeo Church in Dover Plains. Alyssa sent flowers for the three, but decided not to attend the funeral for fear of attracting even more media attention. By that time, the newspapers were delving into this story, and she thought it wise to stay away from the media to maintain her privacy and that of her two daughters. The greatest difficulty for her would have been explaining that their dad took the life of their older sister, nephew, and brother, and then his own. The girls began visiting a psychologist to help them cope with all of this. And speaking of psychology, a professional from this field spoke in an interview and gave us a hint about what might have happened in this terrible case. He explained that genetic sexual attraction is incest between close relatives, such as siblings or half-siblings, parents and children, or first and second cousins who meet for the first time as adults. This term was coined in the United States in the late 80s by researcher Barbara Gonio, who is also the founder of a support group for adoptees and their biological families who were previously unknown to each other and come to live together. In Brazil, we had a case of an incestuous throuple, and I will leave the link to this video for you to watch right after. Guys, I want to apologize in advance because I have a hard time with this incest thing. I say incesto all the time, okay? So I apologize to you all. I know the correct term is incesto, but I say incesto, and I will try to improve on that. Anyway, folks, thank you to those who stayed with me until now. If you stayed until here, right, leave your like, as it really motivates me to keep bringing this type of content to you. I'll stop here and see you in the next video.